The great tower of glass and steel touched the clouds, its walls shining with alien symbols and glowing lights. A place where the richest and most powerful lived, a place where a human janitor did not belong. Yet every night, long after the alien executives had gone, he walked through those endless halls with his mop, his bucket, and his tired hands. His name was Daniel. He was not special, not a hero, just a man trying to earn enough to survive in a galaxy that did not care much for humans. The aliens called humans weak, slow, replaceable. Many times he heard the whispers when he walked by. Still, Daniel kept working, sweeping the endless marble floors, cleaning the wide windows that showed the stars beyond. This night was no different. The halls were quiet, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He had just finished scrubbing the lobby when he heard a faint sound. It was soft, like a sigh. Like someone trying not to cry. Daniel stopped. He tilted his head, listening. The sound came from the corner of the hall where the golden doors stood. He hesitated. Those doors led to the private wing, the place only the richest and most powerful entered. Humans were told to keep away, yet the sound came again. A small whimper, a faint voice. Daniel placed his mop against the wall and slowly walked closer. When the doors slid open, the sight froze him. Inside the golden chamber sat a little alien child. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes glowing faint blue. She was in a floating chair, her legs thin and unmoving. She had tried to lift a cup of glowing liquid, but it had spilled across her lap. The chair beeped with warning sounds, and the girl's face twisted in pain and shame. Daniel's heart tightened. He saw the fear in her eyes, not fear of pain, but fear of being seen weak. Slowly, carefully, he stepped forward. "It's all right," he said softly. His voice echoed in the golden room. The child looked up at him, surprised, as if no one had ever spoken to her gently before. He pulled out his cloth. He knelt beside her chair, and without hesitation, he began wiping the spilled drink from her small hands. The chair hummed, its sensors warning that an unauthorized human was too close. Daniel ignored it. "There, see? No harm done," he whispered, his tone calm, like he was speaking to a frightened kitten. The child blinked, her glowing eyes softening. "You are not afraid of me?" she asked. Her voice was weak but curious. Daniel smiled, tired but kind. "Why would I be? You're just a kid who dropped her drink. Happens to everyone." Her lips trembled, as if she was not used to such words, not used to being treated as just a child. He gently adjusted the cup so it rested safely in the holder on her chair. Then with his mop and bucket, he cleaned the floor around her, every stroke of the mop slow and careful. The girl watched him with wide eyes. "You are human," she whispered, as if it was something rare. "The others, they do not speak to me. They only move me, feed me, but they do not look at me." Daniel's chest ached at those words. He looked at her again, truly looked. Her body was fragile, her legs thin and twisted, but her eyes were full of light, full of a spirit waiting to be seen. "Well, then they're missing something important," he said. "Everyone deserves someone to look at them, to listen." The girl stared at him, silent, then slowly, for the first time in who knows how long, she smiled. It was small, uncertain, but real. Daniel felt something warm in his chest. He was just a janitor, cleaning floors, yet in this moment, he felt his work had meaning. He gave the girl a small nod, then picked up his mop again. "Don't worry, little one. I'll make sure this place shines. You'll see yourself in the floor like a mirror." She laughed, a soft sound like the chime of glass, a sound that had not been heard in this tower for a very long time. What Daniel did not know was that every corner of the golden room was watched. Hidden cameras recorded every movement, every word. And in the highest office of the tower, the richest alien woman in the sector, mother of the child, sat in silence, her glowing eyes fixed on the screen. She had seen many things in her life: deals, betrayals, wars, victories. But she had never seen this. A human janitor kneeling with kindness before her disabled daughter. A human who smiled when others turned away. Her hand tightened on the armrest of her chair. Something strange stirred in her chest, something she had not felt in years. And in that silent moment, as Daniel pushed his mop away, unaware of the eyes on him, the future of all three of them began to change. The richest woman in the city did not sleep much, not because she could not, but because power never rested. She was an alien billionaire. Her empire stretched across dozens of worlds, her name whispered in fear and respect. She owned fleets, mines, and entire cities, and yet tonight, her eyes were not on the numbers or the deals. They were on a screen. She sat in her private chamber, the walls glowing with faint silver light. In front of her, dozens of screens showed different parts of her tower, guards moving, machines cleaning, servants carrying trays, but her focus was fixed on one screen alone, the golden chamber, where her only child sat in her floating chair, and where a human janitor knelt, cleaning spilled drink with steady hands. The billionaire leaned forward. Her cold expression did not change, but inside her chest something strange stirred. For years she had hired the best doctors, the most skilled nurses, expensive caretakers. All of them worked with silence, with precision, but none of them gave her daughter a smile. None of them looked at her as a child, yet this human, a man paid barely enough to survive, had looked at the girl with simple kindness. The billionaire's daughter, frail, fragile, broken by fate, was smiling on the screen, a true smile. The sound of her laughter reached the microphones and echoed through the speakers. Soft and delicate, the billionaire froze. For so long she had not heard that sound, not since before the illness weakened her child. Her long fingers tapped against the armrest. A human, she whispered, almost with disbelief. A janitor. Her advisors often told her humans were only useful for cheap labor, simple jobs and cleaning. But this janitor had done what no wealth, no doctor, no servant had achieved. He had given her daughter back her smile. The billionaire narrowed her eyes. Suspicion and curiosity tangled inside her mind. Was this man trying to gain her attention? Was he pretending kindness to rise above his station? She had seen men, aliens, kings, and rivals do anything for power. Could a janitor be the same? And yet, the way he had spoken, the way he had wiped the floor and held no fear, it did not look like a performance. It looked real. She touched the screen lightly, pausing the image on the janitor's tired but gentle smile. For a long moment her cold face softened, but then as quickly as it came she pushed the feeling away. She was not a woman who trusted easily. She had built her empire with iron will, with no space for weakness. Kindness in her world was often just another mask. Still, she decided to watch more. The next night came. Daniel returned, mop and bucket in hand. He walked the same long halls, his eyes weary but steady, and again, he stopped when he heard the faint sound. The little girl waiting for him, her glowing eyes bright. "Did you come back?" she asked shyly. Daniel smiled. "Of course I said I'd make this floor shine like a mirror, didn't I?" She laughed, her chair hovering forward a little. "Then you must tell me another Earth story, the one about rivers." It sounded like music. Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "All right, but you'll have to promise not to tell anyone my secrets." The girl placed a small hand over her heart. "I promise." And so he told her of Earth's forests, of the rain falling heavy and fresh, of children running through green fields. His words painted pictures that filled her lonely mind with colors she had never seen. The billionaire watched from her chamber. She could see her daughter's hands moving, her lips forming questions, her eyes alive again. Something inside the mother cracked. It was both painful and beautiful. Her daughter had not spoken this much in years. The billionaire pressed a button, and her most trusted aide appeared, bowing low. "Yes, my lady?" She pointed at the screen. "That human janitor. I want a file, every detail, every word, every step. Do it quietly. Let no one know." The aide nodded and left at once. The billionaire leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She could not ignore what she had seen, but neither could she allow herself to trust too quickly. If this man was playing a game, if he was tricking her daughter into false hope, she would crush him without mercy. But if he was real, if his kindness was true, she closed her eyes for a moment, remembering her daughter's laughter. The sound echoed in her mind like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. For years she had thrown riches into a black hole, searching for something that could bring joy back to her child. Tonight it had been given freely by a janitor with a mop. The thought made her chest ache in a way she had not felt in decades. From the shadows of her chamber, the billionaire decided. She would watch, she would test him. She would see what lay beneath this human simple smile, for if he was different, if he was truly different, then her world, her empire, was about to change forever. The next nights passed quietly. Daniel moving through the golden halls with his mop and bucket. His steps were slow, steady like a man used to shadows, but something new had started. Each time he came, he was not alone anymore. The little alien girl waited for him. Her name was Leora. He learned it when she whispered it shyly one night, as if afraid her name was not worth saying. Daniel smiled and repeated it out loud. Leora, he said. That's a beautiful name. And she had smiled again, brighter than the stars outside the tower at first. He only cleaned and listened to her small questions, but soon she asked for more. Tell me about Earth, she begged, her glowing eyes wide. Tell me about the oceans and the skies, and the birds. Daniel would lean on his mop like a storyteller with a staff. He spoke of forests so deep you could lose yourself in them, of rivers that ran like silver snakes, of children who built castles from sand on the shore. Leora's laughter filled the golden chamber, soft but steady, and each time she laughed, Daniel felt lighter. He began to notice small changes too. The girl's hands grew steadier when she reached for her cup. Her voice grew stronger when she asked questions. Her chair still held her frail body, but her spirit was no longer trapped. One night, as Daniel was finishing his work, Leora pressed something into his hand. It was a small charm, made of thin crystal, glowing faintly blue. He frowned, confused. What's this? Her voice shook, but her eyes were bright. A gift for you. Daniel shook his head. Leora, I can't take this. It looks expensive. She pressed it tighter into his palm, her little hand trembling. It is mine. I want you to have it, you. You don't treat me like I am broken. You make me feel normal, like I am just a girl. Please take it. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. His throat tightened. He was only a janitor, forgotten by most. Yet this child, daughter of the richest woman in the city, wanted to give him something precious. Not because of money, but because of trust. Slowly, he nodded and closed his hand around the charm. All right, I'll keep it safe. I promise. Leora's smile glowed brighter than the crystal itself. What Daniel did not know was that far above, her mother watched. The billionaire sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the screen. Her daughter, her only child, who had once stopped speaking to anyone, was giving away her treasure to a human janitor. The billionaire's chest ached again. Was this weakness, or was this hope? She could not decide. The next day, Daniel came earlier than usual. He had bought something small from the market with his day's wages, a simple piece of candy wrapped in red paper. It was cheap, nothing compared to the riches in the tower, but he held it like it was important. When he met Leora that night, he crouched in front of her and held it out. For you, he said, a gift in return. Her eyes widened, glowing brighter. For me? He nodded, smiling. Yes, I used to eat these as a child on Earth, sweet, simple. But I thought you'd like it. She unwrapped it slowly, placed it on her tongue, and her face lit up with joy. It tastes like stars. She laughed, her small hands clapping with excitement. Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. No, that's just sugar. But inside, he felt her happiness like fire spreading through the cold halls. The billionaire leaned back in her chair. She covered her mouth with her hand, not wanting the guards to see her trembling lips. She remembered when she used to give her daughter expensive toys. Rare jewels, gold-laced gowns. None of them had ever brought such a smile. Yet a piece of human candy had done what her wealth could not. Her advisors would call it foolish. They would laugh at the thought that a human janitor had given her daughter joy. But here, in the silence of her chamber, the truth was clear. Her daughter was alive again, still. The billionaire was not ready to trust. She would not allow her child to be hurt by false kindness. She whispered into the dark, Tomorrow, I will test him. But Leora, unaware of her mother's plans, only clutched the candy wrapper in her small hands. As if it were treasure, she whispered to Daniel. You gave me something no one else did. A piece of your world, Daniel smiled, tired but proud. And you gave me something too, Leora. Something I didn't know I needed. Your smile, the little girl's laugh echoed again, soft and sweet. And in that moment, in the heart of a golden tower, two souls from different worlds gave each other gifts that money could never buy. But in the shadows, powerful eyes still watched, calculating, waiting, deciding what the next move would be. The golden tower was never truly quiet. Machines hummed in the walls, servants hurried in the halls, and guards stood at every corner. But tonight, silence seemed heavier. The billionaire had planned something. Her daughter's happiness had returned, but her heart refused to believe it came without reason. She wanted to see if the human janitor's kindness was real, or if it was only a mask. Daniel did not know he was walking into a test. He carried his mop and bucket as usual, his body tired but his spirit lighter than before. He almost hummed as he walked because he knew Leora would be waiting for him. The thought of her glowing smile gave him strength. Sure enough, when the golden doors opened, the little girl's eyes lit up. Her chair hovered forward. "You came back," she whispered with joy. Daniel smiled. "Of course. I wouldn't miss it." But before he could kneel beside her, another voice cut through the chamber, cold, sharp like glass breaking. "What do you think you are doing, human?" Daniel froze, his head turned slowly, and there she stood, the billionaire herself. Her tall form draped in silver robes, jewels glittering across her arms. Her eyes glowed with icy fire as she stepped closer. The room seemed smaller with her presence, the air itself heavier. "Cleaning." "Ma'am?" Daniel answered carefully, bowing his head. Her lips curved in a cruel smile. "Cleaning? Is that what you call sitting with my daughter, telling her stories, giving her candy?" Her voice dripped with disdain. Daniel swallowed hard, but he did not back away. He glanced at Leora, who looked frightened, her small hands trembling on the chair's handles. "I wasn't trying to upset anyone," Daniel said softly. "She just needed someone to listen." The billionaire's eyes narrowed. Her voice rose, cutting the silence. "You dare? You are a janitor, a servant. You are paid to mop floors, not speak to her, not touch her, not—" Before she could finish, Daniel's voice cut through. Calm but firm. "With respect, ma'am, she deserves more than silence." The words hung in the golden room like a thunderclap. The guards nearby shifted uneasily, their hands twitching on their weapons. Never before had a human janitor spoken to the billionaire this way. Leora's glowing eyes filled with tears. She looked between them, her lips trembling. "Please, mother, he's my friend." The billionaire turned sharply toward her daughter. Her cold mask cracked for just a moment. Her chest tightened at the word, friend. Her daughter had not called anyone that in years. Daniel saw it, the hesitation in her eyes. And he pressed on. "I don't want anything from her. I don't want money, I don't want favors, I just wanted her to feel like a child again." The billionaire stared at him, her gaze sharp enough to pierce stone. Every instinct told her to dismiss him, to crush him, to remind him of his place. Yet his words burned in her mind. Leora reached forward, clutching Daniel's sleeve. "Please don't send him away," she whispered, her voice shaking. The billionaire's heart twisted. She had arranged this moment as a trap, expecting the janitor to cower, to beg, to show his true greed. Instead, he had stood firm, not for himself, but for her daughter. The silence stretched long, broken only by the hum of Leora's chair. Finally, the billionaire lifted her chin, her voice cold but quieter now. "Very well, human, you may stay. For tonight." Daniel gave a small nod, not in victory but in relief for the child. He turned back to her, his smile gentle again. "See? Everything's fine." Leora clung to his sleeve, her glowing eyes bright with hope. The billionaire turned away, her robes trailing across the floor as she left the chamber, but her mind was not calm. Inside her heart she was shaken. She had seen men with power fall to greed. She had seen kings lie to her face. But this janitor had defended her daughter with nothing but truth. It was not weakness, it was not ambition, it was something else. Something she had not seen in years. Human courage from her private chamber. She watched again on the screens as Daniel knelt and began telling Leora another story. His voice low, his smile warm. The girl's laughter filled the golden room once more. The billionaire pressed her hand against her chest, her eyes closing. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps she had been wrong all her life about humans. But still, doubt whispered in her mind. And she knew this was only the beginning. If this man was to stay, he would face more than her tests. He would face the eyes of the galaxy itself. And somewhere deep inside, a thought formed that frightened her. What if she did not just respect him? What if she needed him? The golden tower felt different after that night. The servants whispered in the halls. The guards shifted nervously at their posts. Everyone had seen what happened. Everyone had heard the human janitor speak to the billionaire without fear. Some called him foolish, others called him brave. But one thing was certain. He was no longer invisible. Daniel did not care for whispers. He still walked the same path with his mop and bucket. He still bent his tired back to clean the endless floors. Yet something in him had changed. Each step he took now carried purpose. For when he reached the golden chamber, Leora was waiting, her glowing eyes filled with joy. The billionaire, however, was not finished. Her cold mind was still full of questions. She had tested him, and he had not broken. But she needed to know more. She needed to see what truly lay inside this human. So she made her decision. She would call him to her private chamber. That night, after Daniel had finished speaking with Leora, 2 guards stepped forward. "The lady wishes to see you," they said. Daniel frowned. His first thought was fear. Had he gone too far? Was this the moment he would be punished? Still, he nodded and followed. His footsteps echoed through the long silver halls until the great doors opened, revealing a chamber filled with riches beyond imagination. The billionaire sat upon a throne of crystal, her eyes glowing like twin flames. She studied him with silence as he stood awkwardly before her. "Mop still in hand, you," she said finally, her voice cold but sharp. "You are the human janitor who dares to speak for my daughter." Daniel bowed slightly. "Yes, ma'am, I suppose that's me." The billionaire leaned forward, her robes glimmering in the soft light. "Tell me, human, what do you want?" Daniel blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Her lips curved in a faint smile. "Everyone wants something. Money, power, a place in the stars. Tell me your price, name it, and I will give it. If you are honest, you will live in comfort, richer than any human before you." The words hung heavy in the chamber. The guards behind him stiffened. The servants along the walls lowered their heads. To refuse such an offer was madness. To accept it was survival. Daniel's throat tightened. He thought of his small, lonely room in the workers' district. The endless debt, the hunger, the cold. He thought of how easily he could change his life with just one word. But then he thought of Leora, her fragile hands holding the crystal charm, her laughter at the taste of candy, the way her eyes lit up when he told her stories. Slowly, he shook his head. "I don't want money." The billionaire's eyes narrowed. "No?" Daniel's voice was calm but steady. "I don't want power, I don't want comfort. I just wanted to help your daughter. She deserves someone to care for her, not because of what she is worth, but because of who she is. That's all." For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The servants dared not breathe. The guards exchanged nervous glances. The billionaire stared at him, her cold mask faltering. She had heard every kind of answer in her life. Greedy, clever, foolish, but never this. Never such simple truth. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You mean to tell me you ask nothing? Not even a place at my table?" Daniel shook his head. "Ma'am, I'm just a janitor. I don't belong at your table. But I'll always treat your daughter like she matters. Whether I clean the floors or tell her stories, that's enough for me." The billionaire's chest ached again. She clenched her hand against the armrest. Her empire was built on numbers, deals, and betrayals. Yet this human spoke as if none of those things mattered, as if something greater still existed, something she had almost forgotten. For a moment she almost lost her composure, but then she straightened, her face calm once more. "Very well. Janitor," she said, her voice quieter now, "you will continue to see my daughter. You will remain here under my protection, and if you are lying, if I find even a trace of deceit, I will destroy you." Daniel bowed again. "Understood." When he left, the servants whispered louder. Some said the human had been foolish to reject riches. Others said he had shown strength no alien dared. But the truth echoed only in the billionaire's mind. He had refused her wealth. Not out of fear, but out of choice. Later, she stood in the shadows of the golden chamber as Daniel told her daughter another story. Leora laughed, clutching the candy wrapper still hidden in her pocket. The billionaire's heart trembled at the sound. She whispered to herself, "No money, no power. Yet he gives her what I never could." It frightened her. And it moved her for the first time in years. The most powerful woman in the city wondered if her empire, with all its riches and strength, was truly worth anything without the simple kindness of one human janitor. The Golden Tower no longer felt the same. Rumors had spread like wildfire. From the lowest servant to the highest guard, everyone whispered about the human janitor who spoke to the billionaire as if he had no fear. Some called him insane, some called him brave. But none could deny one truth. He had captured the attention of the most powerful woman in the city. Daniel, however, did not chase attention. He still carried his mop and bucket. He still bent his back to clean the endless halls. Yet every night when he entered the golden chamber, Leora's glowing eyes lit up. She would hover her chair toward him eagerly, asking for stories, waiting for jokes, smiling in a way that made him forget his weariness. But outside the golden doors, not everyone was smiling. Rivals of the billionaire had noticed. They heard whispers of a human who now spent time with her daughter. Some mocked her. How could the richest woman in the sector allow her child to bond with a janitor? Others plotted quietly, wondering if this human was more than he appeared. Even inside the tower, jealousy grew. Some servants hated the sight of him being welcomed. Some guards muttered that a human had no place so close to the heir of the empire. Daniel felt their eyes on him, sharp and full of anger, but he kept working, pretending not to notice. One evening, as Daniel told Leora about Earth's night skies, how stars sparkled like endless lanterns, the golden doors opened suddenly. A group of servants entered, their faces tight with disapproval. They bowed to Leora but ignored Daniel completely, whispering harshly to one another. Unbelievable, one muttered. A human in the golden chamber. Shameful, another hissed. Our lady has lost her sense. Daniel heard every word, but he said nothing. He only kept his eyes on Leora, who looked small and frightened. He leaned closer to her chair and whispered, Don't mind them, little star, they don't matter. But Leora's hands trembled. Her glowing eyes filled with tears. They laugh at me too, she whispered back. When you are not here, they whisper that I am broken. They bow to me because they must, but they never see me as me. Daniel's chest ached at her words. He gently touched the side of her chair, his voice steady. Listen, they can call you broken. They can whisper in shadows, but none of that matters. You are Leora. You are more than what they see, and I see you. The little girl's lips curved into a trembling smile. Her tears fell, but she leaned closer, whispering, You make me feel alive. What Daniel did not know was that beyond the chamber her mother stood in the shadows. Watching unseen, she had heard the whispers. She had seen the cruelty of her own servants, and it filled her with rage. But she had also heard Daniel's words, and they pierced her deeper than any blade. For years, she had drowned her empire in silence and cold authority, believing wealth would shield her child from pain. Yet no riches had stopped the whispers. No power had given her daughter dignity. Only the words of a human janitor had. Later that night, the billionaire summoned her most trusted aide. The tall alien bowed low. You called for me, my lady? Her glowing eyes narrowed. I want you to listen carefully. The whispers grow louder, rivals mock me, my own servants dare to question me. The aide tilted his head. Shall I silence them? The billionaire's lips tightened. No, let them whisper, let them mock, for soon they will see what I see, this human. He is not like the others. But the aide hesitated. With respect, my lady, what if you are wrong? What if he hides ambition beneath kindness? Her eyes flashed cold fire. Then I will break him myself, but if I am right, then the galaxy must prepare, for everything will change. In the golden chamber, Leora clutched the candy wrapper Daniel had given her days ago. She kept it hidden like treasure, proof that someone had given her a gift not for her name, not for her status, but simply for her. She whispered to Daniel, Promise me you will never leave. Daniel's tired eyes softened. He crouched beside her, his hand resting gently over hers. I promise, but promises are heavy. And outside the golden tower, enemies were already moving. Some wanted to shame the billionaire. Others wanted to test the human who had captured her attention. The whispers grew louder, turning into plots, turning into chains of secrets hidden in the dark, and soon, those secrets would not only test Daniel's promise, but also the very bond between him, Leora, and the woman who watched from the shadows, for kindness had opened a door. But danger was already waiting on the other side. The day of decision came sooner than anyone expected. The Golden Tower had become the center of whispers across the city. Rivals mocked the billionaire openly, declaring she had lost her pride. The richest woman in the sector, they said, had lowered herself to let a human janitor sit near her daughter. Some claimed she had gone mad. Others believed the human had bewitched her with tricks. But the truth was far simpler. Daniel had given her child something no wealth had ever bought: joy. The billionaire called for a gathering in the great hall of her tower. Leaders of other families came, merchants, nobles, and powerful rivals. The room was filled with silver robes and jeweled crowns, the air heavy with arrogance. At the center of the hall sat Leora in her floating chair. Her glowing eyes nervous, beside her stood Daniel, plain in his worn uniform, mop still leaning against his shoulder. He looked out of place among the glittering aliens, yet his calm eyes did not waver. The billionaire entered last. Her presence silenced the hall instantly. She walked with power, her silver robes flowing behind her. Her eyes sharp as blades, she took her throne at the highest seat and raised her hand. You are here, she said. her voice echoing across the chamber. Because rumors spread like poison, you whisper that I am weak, that I am foolish, that I have lost my mind, you whisper because of him. Her glowing hand pointed toward Daniel. The nobles shifted, some sneered, others chuckled quietly. Yes, one of them spoke boldly. How can the great lady of the tower place value on a human janitor? He is beneath us all. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Their eyes turned toward Daniel, expecting him to bow, to hide, but he did not. He stood steady, even though his heart pounded in his chest. Leora's small voice broke the noise, trembling but clear. He is my friend. The hall froze. Shock rippled through the crowd. The child who rarely spoke, the fragile air they called broken, had raised her voice. She looked at the nobles, tears glowing in her eyes. He sees me not as an heir, not as broken, not as a burden. He sees me as Leora. Just me. Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but before he could, the billionaire rose. Her eyes blazed with fire as she looked down at her rivals. You want to know why this human is here? Why I allow him near my child? Her voice grew louder, sharper. Because he gave her back something none of you, with all your wealth and power, ever could. The hall fell silent. Every word struck like thunder. She stepped down from her throne and stood beside Leora's chair. Her hand rested gently on her daughter's thin shoulder. For years you called her broken. You bowed out of duty, not love. You gave me respect but gave her nothing, and in your arrogance, you forgot what power truly means. The nobles looked uneasy now. Shifting in their seats, she turned sharply, her silver robe sweeping the floor, her eyes locking on Daniel. This human, this janitor, showed my daughter kindness without asking for gold. He gave her joy without seeking power. He reminded me of something I had forgotten. Humanity. Gasps echoed across the hall. Never before had the billionaire spoken of a human with such honor. Then came the moment that silenced them all. She raised her hand and declared, from this day forward, Daniel will remain in this tower. Not as a servant, not as a janitor, but as protector of my child. His place is here, beside her. And if any of you dare laugh, know this, you mock me as well. And I do not forgive mockery. The room froze. The nobles' sneers died, their eyes wide with disbelief. Some lowered their heads, others clenched their fists in silent rage. Daniel himself stood stunned. His mop slipped from his shoulder. Clattering to the floor, he stared at the billionaire. Unable to believe her words, Leora's glowing eyes filled with tears of happiness. She reached for his hand, whispering, You're not leaving me. Daniel squeezed her small hand gently, his heart heavy with emotion. Never, he whispered back. The billionaire looked at them both. Her cold mask cracked for just a moment. Her voice softened so only Daniel could hear. You showed me what money cannot buy for that. You have my respect. The hall remained in stunned silence. The choice she made that day would be remembered for years. A billionaire placing her trust not in nobles, not in powerful allies, but in a human janitor who had nothing but kindness to give. And as the stars shone outside the tower, Daniel realized something he never thought possible. He had walked into this place as a man no one noticed, but he would walk out as someone who changed lives. For in the heart of the Golden Tower, a janitor, a child, and a billionaire had formed something stronger than wealth, stronger than power. They had formed a bond that would shake the galaxy,